often looks much better to have 2 or 3 quotes by other people. Well, if you can do that and you find other people to do that with, then you're helping them. I know several companies, I've done this myself. Well, okay, we're going to try and communicate this story, this way of looking at the world, this problem. And when I'm pitching, I'm going to write about this story, and I'm going to include you in the stories that I pitch. And you know what? I want you to include me in the stories that you pitch. That's a way for you to double down on the exposure that you get, because you help each other. And it gives you much more credibility as well. Any other questions? Okay.
What tools should be on a blog for capturing their visitors or sharing or those types of things?
For social media, I actually, because a lot of the sites that I publish on, they just have the buttons and not the counters. So I got my own custom coded breakdown tool. It's just socialsharescounter.com. You just put in the URL and it just shows tweets, likes, Facebook shares, Facebook comments, stumble upon, delicious still. Threw it on there just in case.
You're talking about for your own blog.
For your own blog, there's DigDig, which is just a WordPress plugin. That's the most common one I see people use. That and Sexy Bookmarks.
Say again?
DigDig with 2 G's, and then Sexy Bookmarks. Those are just 2 different WordPress plugins you can use to easily get social media buttons on your site.
I mean, lots of the email providers, so Aweber, for example, is a popular email provider for bloggers, and they have a pop-up tool or a capture form that's built into the system that automatically takes the email address and puts it into their system, and will also take your RSS feed and automatically format that and send it to the readers who subscribe through that form.
Do you get many emails? Do you feel that you're capturing many of those visitors?
So right now, I don't write very much for my own site. I write for more other sites more than for my own, purely because they have a much bigger audience.
My company site, we 4 months or so ago installed one of those pop-ups when you're leaving the page. It's not, you don't have to click it to close or anything else. It just pops up and it says like, are you not wanting more leads or something like that? Just something quick and simple, and it just, you can put in your email in there and you can get 15, 20 a day or so. I mean, we only get a few hundred or so visitors, so I mean, it's better than the original 1 to 2 a day that we would get. And we just use MailChimp, I think, because they give you that little code there.
So when you go to a site and it's got a blog and it's got the annoying pop-up to enter your email address, they collect, if you put that on your site, statistically I found you get 4 to 5 times as many email subscribers as without it. They're annoying, but
It works.
Could you repeat what you just said? What was it you put on?
So you know when you go to a website and it's got that little pop-up thing that comes and if you have to fill it asks you to fill your email address. So they can collect, so they can send you newsletters. They work. They grow the newsletter list very fast. Any other questions?
It's so bizarre. Everyone behind you hates them.
Everyone hates them, but yet majority of users still put in their info. I mean, the X button is big as can be. It's not a forced thing by any means, but people are still putting in their info.
People are lazy, and unless you suggest it to them, they won't think about doing it. Okay, one more.
Something that Drew mentioned earlier, that so many writers write for different publications and sites, so how do you avoid pitching more than one writer of the same publication?
Again, if you have that Yesware tool and everything, you can see if that writer opened your email, and then with Boomerang you can follow up with them for a month or so, once a week, and if they never get back to you or never open it, then it's time to move on and find a different writer at the same publication.
So what about phone contact?
Don't ever call me. That's just really going to annoy whoever you're calling, especially if it's an unsolicited phone call. If you called me out of nowhere and just started pitching to me, I would probably say no and hang up.
Do you like sales calls?
Oh, I enjoy calling when people see that you're not trying to sell them a timeshare somewhere. Everyone, because I feel like everyone gives you 5 or 10 seconds just to even figure out, people realize who you are and what the call's about. And in that time, if you present it right, you can get there for another half a minute or so. You
I'd
can
probably
enjoy it.
cut you off and say email me.
And at that point, I would check you off my list as,
Oh, you're already off mine.
okay.
Just being real with you, man.
But no, because I want to list people who are going to advocate for me, not people who are just going to, share content.
The challenge is, you all want to have your stories told. And there are many, many more of you who want to have your stories told. And we're bombarded, and we're busy. And if we keep getting interrupted, it disrupts our workflow. So we don't want to be interrupted. And I would, and for every one person that pitches me a great story, there are 100 people who pitch me the wrong story. If I just had people pitching me great stories, that would be great. But most of the time they pitch me the wrong story or something that I'm just not interested in. And so it's more a question of fending people off. That's just the reality of it. Also to note, increasingly, the larger publications rely on contributors. Increasingly, that means that you're doing it to build your brand, to build your audience. So increasingly, that means you're not getting paid for it. So do I want to get a sales call by someone who I don't know, with a story I don't care about, with something I'm doing to build my audience, when I'm not getting paid for it? And even if I am getting paid for it and I work for a large publication, I'm getting paid to produce the content which I think is great, not to promote your company. That's the challenge, and there are so many people who just pitch bad pitches. And the thing is, it's not even necessarily their fault. Lots of PR companies are hired by startups companies. They are paid by those companies to get a story over. So many times when you get a bad pitch, and I know some great PR people, they're being pressured by the company to promote this story, which they know is not news, but they've been told to do it. So that's just a horrible story, and there's thousands of those. So you need to, it comes back to, you want to find and build positive relationships with people who want to communicate with you. Find the way they like to be communicated with, and have something great to share with them. And share it in the way that they want to have it shared. I wouldn't try and cold call, I wouldn't get a list of journalists and try and cold call them. If it works, good for you. There are a lot of people who probably would never write about your company again. That's the way it is. You have a question?
Are you saying not to go with a PR agency at all?
So here's the thing. You can't be good at everything. Okay? We know that as a CEO you can't be good at everything. If you're a CEO or a founder or part of a founding team and you can do it, that's great. But you need to be able to create that great story. On the other hand, if you hire someone to do PR, if they can do it better than you. But generally, we don't want to actually, at the end of the day, unless you've got a great relationship with the PR person, you want to speak to the founder or the CEO. So what can they do? They can help you craft a great story. If they've got great relationships, and they can help develop and work on those great relationships, that's great. But make sure it's someone who really knows that field and has great relationships. So we both are hired by companies to do PR for them. What that means is, if you hire me, I won't write about you. That's one rule, because I've got a conflict. But I probably, because I write about different topics, I know lots of different journalists in those topics, and I've got a relationship, and I can help you craft your story. I know how to craft and create stories and place the stories and get them interested in those stories. Ideally, if you're a CEO and you can do it yourself. But do you have time? Do you have the expertise? Or hire someone that can? Like everything else in your entrepreneurship. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I'll.
So writers do not want to be approached to be hired to write by the person who wants to be written about?
Yes.
Yeah, if you come offering me money to write about your company, I'll instantly block you and probably notify other people.
So you shouldn't be. So here's the thing. the audience wants great positive advice, and they want stuff that's going to help them. If they think that if they think the content's being written about by people who are who paid to be written about, then they won't trust the publication anymore. So the publications have to keep the two separate, and so as a writer, you have to keep the two separate. If you thought that I was telling you this advice standing up here today because I was advertising iPhones, sponsored by iPhone, and kept talking about iPhones all the time, you wouldn't trust a word that I'm saying. So you can't just do that. Now, there are some bloggers who do write about people for money. Technically, they have to declare that this is a sponsored post. Different publications, so for example, Mashable, massive publication, they have a series of content series brought to you. They had a content series brought to you by Dell, and they had Dell advertising around it, and they were very clear and transparent about it. So I think it's 8:10. So unless there's something that you want to add, nope. We are around and here, and we'll be here for a little bit. But for those that need to, I was told to sort of finish up at about 8, just after 8. So we're around, happy to answer more questions, happy to talk individually. Thank you very much for coming, really appreciate it. I know Rob will be back a little bit later. Happy to help, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, say it's $1 off. We're not trying to profit off by any means. Just over the phone, just how he was saying, because I'm working out, and if I was getting phone calls and stuff, I'm probably in the middle of an article, running with it really strong, so I get distracted for 30 seconds. And I got to score like a split line that and I don't even send it voice notes because I don't like putting it on the phone. I'm very happy to
Mike, nice to meet you. Mike, wow, you should as a cheer again. Oh yeah, my season, my language. Oh, what are you saying? Is it still hum?
Yeah.